Thank you, Eric. And thank you, everyone, for coming to the 5D event here in Los Angeles. I'm very happy to be here. I think the 5D event is quite important, actually. We're here to do one thing, and that's raise global consciousness. We can do that on many different levels. I do my part, I think, through alchemical hypnotherapy. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist in Sacramento, and I do a number of types of modalities of therapy. Actually, I'm very interactive with my clients so that they get the benefit from it that they need. I was saying that meditation is very important because it teaches a person how to control the mind and the body. The mind and the body do work as one. And there aren't that many practices that will show you how to do that. This we can actually do because we're going to move into the brain and understand how it works. I also am the founder and organizer of the Sacramento Alien Abduction and Contactee support group in Sacramento. We run it at this really beautiful house somewhere. And I have 100 members. I can only see about 25 or 30 at a time because that's all the space will allow. And about another dozen or so unofficial members that don't come and put their names out there because they can't. Yes, we still live in a day and age when there are experiencers who have to hide that because it's not socially acceptable at their place of employment. But we like to offer a forum where a person can express their experience and then talk about it. It's called a support group because we truly do support each other. Everybody's allowed to express whatever they need to do. We talk about everything, though, UFOs, consciousness, dreams. Recently, I accepted a position as a consultant to the research committee for the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for research into extraterrestrial encounters. This is a magnificent organization. At least it has a lot of magnificent people involved in it right now. Of course, Ray Hernandez is the face. He's pushing it forward with Edgar Mitchell, who, of course, was a Apollo 14 astronaut. And everybody who's a part of this organization, and there is a plethora of scientists, psychologists, physicists, hypnotherapists, everybody's putting their research together, and everyone that's involved is an experiencer. So we're hoping October 1st to have a global liberation day, a day of freedom where irregardless of the experience you had, you can express it without ridicule. So I'm going to talk today about hypnotherapy and alien abduction because that's what I do, but also because you'll see later that it has a lot more to do with our brain chemistry than most people realize. So I'm going to say why hypnotherapy is important in the phenomena, how it works, the different alien races. And these alien races, this is about abduction, okay? There are altruistic, beautiful entities that interact. They're not abductors. They don't do that. So this is about abduction, so some of it may seem a little negative, but these are just the facts. We'll also study 2 true hypnotherapy cases. But first off, I want to tell you a little bit about how hypnosis works. The conscious mind, the one I'm speaking to you in, and the one you're listening in, is your critical mind. The aspect of your critical mind will be judgmental. It'll be gauging what you're hearing. Is it true or not true? Is it real? And then you'll come to a determination. That's a lot of work for the critical mind, but that's what it does. Now, the subconscious mind acts as a receiver. It only takes in information and stores it. In fact, the brain is so important that every life event, everything you've ever experienced, probably in utero, but definitely from the time that you were born, is recorded. And we have access to it, we most certainly do. But The subconscious mind never asks, is this real or not? It simply accepts. It knows its job is to receive, like the lungs know how to breathe, like the heart knows how to beat. The subconscious mind just takes in information, even when the conscious mind is doing another job. So what we do is we turn down the conscious mind. So all that inner dialogue, all that constant chatter, all of those what ifs are just slowly turned down. Then it's not gone. A person is still very much aware that they're being deeply relaxed and put into a state of hypnosis. But when this relaxation spreads through the mind and the body, the subconscious mind becomes more alert, very receptive, very open, heightened to receiving. And this is when a hypnotherapist would add positive suggestions during behavioral modification to help somebody get through something. That's typically what it's used for. But you see a little UFO in the background? Just wondering, because your subconscious mind did. Whether you did or not, whether you're aware of it or not, just as the body works as an antenna to interpret the environment through our senses, the brain is receiving the information. And so if you saw the UFO, great. Your brain did. The brain being probably the most remarkable, magnificent organ in the human body, responsible for all the gland secretions, for the movement of our muscles, for our creativity, for our spirituality. The subconscious holds that at all of the early developmental stages. But the brain records every single moment that you've been alive. And there's a few techniques that a hypnotherapist can do to give you a 360-degree view of an experience. So you're not just remembering it like you're seeing it, you're interpreting it through the entire body. All of your senses are picking things up during an experience. Smell, in particularly smell. And we'll soon see that there are particular extraterrestrials that smell bad, really, really bad, like rotting stuff. Yeah. So the conscious mind that we're talking in right now, that's your beta brainwave. The alpha is the subconscious mind. When I hypnotize somebody, I take them to the delta, and I like to work between delta and alpha. If I go any further, they'll fall asleep, and then I'm spending too much time waking them up. This is important to you because extraterrestrials know this. They know, just like I do, that in between these two brain waves, we have an entry, we have an opening, we slip right into this brainwave. Sometimes an experiencer thinks that, oh, I dreamed it. That's because it's in the dream wavelength. So that's how it's remembered. That's done deliberately. So a lot of times, and most often, a dream of a UFO is a memory. Theta is far too low to get any good information. I've taken people there, and there's some great stuff there because it actually starts to act as a doorway. We've talked a lot about the unconscious and the subconscious, but there is a superconscious, one that takes us up and out and above all else. So that's your brainwaves. And just so you know how the mind works, each word I've said has an emission because it started with a thought. So they're moving out of me. Where are they going? If I were to fall down and hit my head and a doctor hooked me up, we would read those brain waves and he would know. They would be redirected onto a graph. When the brain waves are not being redirected, where are they? I'll tell you. Higher thoughts, like true unconditional love, an actual authentic act of altruism, When you put somebody else before you, you're thinking in the fourth dimension, and those thoughts live in those areas. We draw from it often. Any thought that is deemed negative, and I don't believe there are any negative thoughts. Everything has a purpose. There is no yin without a yang. It's not negative as in bad or evil. It exists for a reason. It's got a purpose. But when a negative thought enters the mind, you should let it come and let it go. Because thoughts have a mass. They have an energy, and they're accumulative. It falls under the universal laws of likes attract likes. These are third-dimensional thoughts. Third-dimensional and lower, they have a weight. It's like a mass collection of thought. And this exists. So, you've heard people say it. You might not be aware of it. They walked into a room, and the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Because those thoughts were still heavy in the air. They have weight. Your thoughts are extraordinarily powerful. So, if they're that powerful, we should learn how to use them to our benefit and to the benefit of everyone. So, there's a very good chance that if you don't know how to control your thoughts and your mind, somebody else will do it for you, or something else. Maybe it'll be a TV program, maybe it'll be radio, maybe it'll be harp or an elf wave, or doesn't matter. If you're not taking the responsibility to control your own thoughts, and just so you know, your thoughts dictate your feelings, and your feelings will dictate your behavior in the world. If you can't control that, then somebody else will try to. So that's important because that's how the mind works, and we're going to know a little about that. But first, who is being abducted? Current reports do say that 280 million people have reported an abduction phenomena worldwide. From every race, from every culture, and I'm going to point out right now that there are definitely geographical and cultural differences in how an experiencer is able to express it. We see in South America, they have more of a monster, hairy, beast-like creature. North America, it's the gray alien. England, it's the tall Nordics. And Asia, Middle East, it's jinn. We see them reported. So we always have to be very careful as a researcher to take these things into account. At the same time, the extraterrestrials are very well aware of our cultural beliefs, and so they do have the ability to shift their physics into a different form, shapeshifters, and so they can tap into your core belief system and appear to you the way they think is going to be most pleasant. So this makes me concerned, frankly, because I think that if a reptilian can shapeshift into a Nordic, how do you know you're speaking to a Nordic? And isn't just that tall, blonde, blue or green-eyed persona the one that people want to relate to? Isn't that what, at least in the United Kingdom, it was? And this is what we see them reporting. So I find that very interesting. But this 280 million people, like I said, I run a support group for people who have had these. And when I asked them, how many people have reported your experience, out of my 100-ish people, only 2. This is based on a 284% value system on worldwide population, just so we know. So everybody can be abducted. We hear that it's generational. There's a reason for that. It's not that they're so entirely interested in one particular family. It's that the abductors live 8 to 9 to 1,000 years. We live like 60 to 100-ish, not even as long as most trees. And since they live that long, in order for them to study our genetics, it has to be generational, because we're just dying left and right on them. So hypnotherapy and the abduction phenomena is tricky. don't ever want to lead a person. I've never told anybody they've been abducted. Never mentioned an alien to them. I've been doing this since 1995. That would be wrong. It's best for them to tell me what they encountered. Doesn't matter how much experience I have or what it might sound like. I need to have their words describe it so that I can understand it. So the phenomena is important. So you ask why hypnosis? Really, it's because there are some things you never forget, and there are some things you just can't remember. And you can't remember for a reason, because they know how to manipulate the brain chemistry. They know what secretions to make us fall asleep. You hear people all the time talk about during an abduction that they felt paralyzed. They couldn't move their body at all, but they were alert. They were awake during the process. We know that that's called the hypnagogic state. We see that it happens while the sleep chemistry and the awake chemical are dripping at the same time, and they're fighting for dominancy. So this is normal. It happens to people. It's not abnormal. But they know how to duplicate it, and they do that to suit their purposes and create false memories as well. Ooh. So I'm going to tell you who the abductors are. Obviously, these are gray aliens, and we see them being reported all the time because there are 22.2 subspecies of gray aliens. Most gray aliens do have a negative effect on a person or their consciousness. Some do not. Just so you know, people misinterpret a zeta and a gray all the time because they're roughly the same height and their body style is very similar. Their skin tones are not. Zeta has, well, we'll get to zeta. This is gray. But before I get too much into them, I want to say that I firmly believe that there is an astral hierarchy and that everything works for a reason and has a purpose. And if we start from the earth, here we have a subterranean world of extraterrestrials. 2 or 3 different ones live underneath us. Then terrestrial entities, those would be us. Extraterrestrial actually is a particular bandwidth. It vibrates at a particular frequency, and it goes about as far as our Milky Way, if that's easy for you to visualize. And then we have celestial entities, and they are the highest, most loving, altruistic beings. You would see them in forms of light or energy, and I have seen them. When I've seen them, they've always come in what looks like the most indescribable shade of violet. That's very beautiful, and I recognize them immediately because of how they vibe. And just, they feel feminine. And when you're dealing with a different extraterrestrial, and I ask, was it male or female or androgynous? Did you get a sense of that? I generally hear androgynous or male. The higher celestial beings do seem to have a femininity, which I think is beautiful. But there are also multidimensional and interdimensional beings. There are astral entities. And then there are etheric entities. So what I'm telling you is that life exists in every bandwave. And you think of it this way. Our entire universe or galaxy, if you were to drop a stone in the middle and each vibration of a wave would go out, each wave creates a frequency. Each frequency contains a life form. Each life form contains a consciousness. So a human is actually able to interact with almost any one of those. Hi, Rye. So that's the astral hierarchy. And I just wanted to make that clear before I move into the extraterrestrial races that are the abductors. The gray aliens, like I said, 22.2 subspecies of gray aliens. They came from a particular planetary system, and they had issues of their own. And I know a lot of people think that, oh, they're coming because they made these terrible environmental errors and they've blown themselves up. Not so. No, not even close. It's not true. What I believe, and what my research indicates, is that the gray aliens do not contain a soul, and that they created a hybridization program so that they could attach themselves to a human so that they could eventually ascend to a higher consciousness. Technically, they are advanced, but I don't believe they have a soul. And I know a lot of people might think that that puts them into the category of demon or jinn. And maybe it does, because we see that based on culture or geography, how the experiencer expresses themselves. It's based on their belief system, based on their culture. Now, these are tall grays. Tall grays, they're a hierarchy. Short grays work for the tall grays. The tall grays are more sentient. The shorter grays seem almost robotic sometimes, and I think that they might be a bit bot or droid. That's why also people think that they're a soulless, because they would be. Now, the taller grays are self-serving. Words like self-serving are things that you want to remember as we shift from a third dimensional consciousness into the fourth and fifth, because self-serving is something that will never be allowed to be brought up there. Cannot be self-serving, because self-serving comes from the lower neocortex of the brain, the R factor, that's the reptilian point. So that's for survival, and it's okay to survive. We have these needs that need to be met when we live on the planet Earth. We have to eat, we have to pay bills, and we have to have shelter. We don't necessarily need medical, because we can do that naturally. But we have our basic needs, and so that aspect of our brain works very hard to meet those needs. But because of the way society has been designed, we're continuously on this rat race to meet this need, and it's not natural to the human existence. We don't have the right time to spend in that headspace of freedom and creativity that allows us to have or to tap into our human potential, to be the humans that we are supposed to be without an extraterrestrial interference. That extraterrestrial interference moves right down into our governments. And we know the former Defense Minister of Canada, Ron Hellyer, and the former Defense Minister of the United Kingdom, Nick Pope, both stated publicly that the United States government has suppressed them from revealing the information that their governments had collected on the extraterrestrial phenomena. We saw this year a huge meeting at the UN. 15 countries now have pooled their information and have selected specific extraterrestrial and UFO researchers, because those two items are different. UFOs are propulsion. They're going to talk about aero-echo propulsion systems. It's the nuts and bolts of it. The others are the entities. Those are two different things, because a UFO doesn't actually have to have an alien on it, and an alien doesn't actually have to come and see you via a UFO. So we see a lot of different types of extraterrestrials in the headlines. Reptoids, Draco, and we see a lot of hybrids. Man, they are trying to procreate with anything that moves. Anything. Tall grays with reptiles, or reptoids, sorry, and humans. And I have an excellent shot of one of those. Just a second. Who's asking that? Which? Yes, reptiles do have genitals. Grays and tall grays do not. And reptiles are extraordinarily interested in sexuality. Very interested. Pervertedly so. Yeah, the reptiles, they create all of this type of, I don't know if you're familiar with Eve Longorian's book called Love Bite. And what this is a mass manipulation of relationships among people. So they'll put two people together and then study it, watch the sex life, and then they'll inflame things to see how we react. 100% manipulative. Now, it has been presented to me through all of my research that when I interview or speak with an abductee, it's very difficult for them to say what specific extraterrestrial was involved, because many of them state that there are multiple beings. They'll see grays, tall grays, and then in the background, the mantis. Now, this is a human tall gray hybrid mantis. You can see the small, very small reptile. Sorry, these are graphic like this, but mantis also as a hybrid, because an actual mantis is between 7 and 8 feet. One of the things that they all have in common is that they have a hive mind, collective consciousness. They work among each other, Borg-like, I guess, if you're watching the Star Trek. So it's a little bit frightening to think that if you were to wake in the night and find something like this standing beside your bed, most people would be quite frightened. This is a human reptile. This has been reported through South America, Mexico, and southern United States. This is possibly a gray reptile hybrid. That's what we see. So we see that there is a huge breeding program. Right. Do you know what these are? Absolutely. Ta-da! This is a human.
Can you repeat that last thing?
Slipsis. We will in a second. I'm going to go back to all of them. This is a Nordic alien. This is a humanoid. She's going to say it. Solipsly right. I don't say it in Spanish very well. I'm sorry. It's not my first language. But at the end, I'd be happy to go over a list. And I have a handout if you like. Nordic aliens, like I said earlier, or geographical report, that's usually in the United Kingdom and Australia and New Zealand as well. So if they have an extraterrestrial encounter, it's usually a tall Nordic. They say they're Pleiadians. I say I'm not quite sure, because they're capable of shape-shifting. And if they can look that human, if they can look that human, they can manipulate us further and trick us. We have tall whites. If you're familiar with Charles Hall, he was on Indian Springs and Nellis Air Force Base back in the 60s, and he said that there are barracks, there's about a population of 200 tall whites, and they have families. So yes, they would have genitalia because they have children, and they live on the barracks, and they're luminescent. Sometimes people say they saw a tall white, but it seemed to have a aura or glow. We also have a lot of stories of these tall whites who, because they're out in the desert, they've made their way into casinos in Vegas. I know it sounds bizarre. They walk a little funny.
After midnight?
They're very tall.
The CIA pit crew walks in and becomes the dealers when they see you. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, we definitely have multiple reports from very reliable witnesses. And if you too would like to see a tall white, they say that in the summer at around midnight, if you're right near where the base ends and you wait, they'll come out. But don't talk to them. Don't approach them. By all means, don't take out your cell phone and try to take a picture or a selfie or anything like that, because they'll kill you. They will kill you instantly. They carry a little weapon that is about to the size of a pencil, and they have killed Air Force enlisted because they felt that they were threatened by them, by their thoughts too, because they're extraordinarily telepathic. Now, it's been said for many years that the tall whites were actually helping the Air Force fight the gray alignment. The gray alignment are the grays the reptoids, the mantis, and those blues. I don't know if you remember seeing that short blue one. The blue ones are coming up quite a lot. They seem to have, the Smurfs, I was told, was designed after those. That because when a person describes a blue, they say it looks like a grumpy old gnome, but they're blue. And they walk like a little deformed also, like the tall whites do. Yeah, I have. Personally, I've seen a blue, a tall gray, short gray, and an energetic entity. And that's all I would say for sure that I know of, that I could absolutely testify to. It's not uncommon for people. Now, myself and many others see extraterrestrials. It's not what I seek. It's just what happens. Oh, let me go back 1 second. The Nordics, just so you know, are mostly clones, which also makes me think that they're designed that way. So that's kind of important to know. The mantis, hive-minded, totally terrifying. They're about 7 to 8 feet. Part of my research is devoted to psychologically profiling the extraterrestrials. I've been able to create 5 distinct categories of abduction in which abductees those are. And we can see that the mantis are the tightest hive mind of them all. What they cannot stand, what they fear most, is the individuality that a human has. So if you are in a position to suppress your fear and not over-emote on any level, but totally be within yourself, you would be able to communicate with the mantis. You would have the upper hand in this communication because it terrifies them, because all of their existence has always been a collective conscious, a hive mind, and to exist without that is extraordinarily frightening to them. And I was very happy to uncover that little bit of information in my research, because if you do find yourself face to face, you should know how to exert yourself and what to do. Now, and the mantis run the gray alignment. The gray alignment is behind the program to create the hybrids. This is a picture. I have an abductee, contactee, she's both. After you recover from being an abductee and you've settled that emotional energy in the minds and in the body, many people can pursue it further and advance it so that they pursue the contact and they become a contactee. Now, this was taken in El Dorado Hills across the street from my abductee. I think it's a abduction craft. We've seen these ones before. It cut right out of the cloud and appeared. Now, this picture was taken by Century 21, and it came in the mail on a postcard, and they didn't even know they took it. So they rushed it over to me, and I have it. If anybody would like to have it up close and personal, take a look at it yourself. This is what came to everybody's house. And go ahead. It's much easier to see on the screen. But so I called Century 21, and I told them who I was. And they said, there's no UFO in that picture. I said, well, yeah, I'll look over the house. It's like right there. So they told me there's no UFO in that picture. They didn't see it. That's right. They just didn't see it. So what? That's us. That's our mind. Their mind wouldn't allow them to accept that reality. We're going to talk about reality and consciousness on Saturday and Sunday when I do my 4th and 5th dimensional consciousness workshop. But it's very important. So anyway, I just thought I'd give you a quick view of an abduction craft. I'm just going to say again, before I get a little bit further into some abduction cases, There are benevolent extraterrestrials. There are beings that are filled with love, with understanding, that want us to do better, but they can't interfere, and they just can't go showing themselves to anyone because perhaps we're all not there yet. But I'm going to start with a true hypnotherapy alien abduction case study. This is a full story that was recounted consciously, and they were never hypnotized. I took the story, and so did the producer of the TV show Experiencers. This has happened to a woman in Canada. She was pregnant, and for the full 9 months that she was pregnant, she was abducted by extraterrestrials. Turns out that the extraterrestrials that were abducting her, based on her physical description, we would say Zeta. There were three of us trying to figure out what we thought. So for 9 months, she was continuously abducted, and just about every abduction story you heard of, implants and the harvesting of genetics, was her recount. No, but that's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. She doesn't believe that's the truth. She asked, did they make her pregnant? And I don't, to the best of my knowledge, believe that's the case, but I'd be open to investigating it further. So she's fully 9 months pregnant, and her sibling, or her 3 children, thank you, her 3 children and her husband are asleep in the house, and she's like, oh my God, everybody's asleep at once, that never happens. So she goes out to rest in the yard in a lawn chair, and just like that, 2 extraterrestrials appeared on either side of her. She was in her nightgown still, and she got up and walked with them through the apple orchard into a clearing where the tractors turn around. And right in that clearing, about 50 feet above the tree line, hovered a craft. And instantaneously, she felt this time distortion, and she was on the craft. She was in her nightgown originally, and she said her feet felt cold. She told the ETs, my feet are cold. So they brought her over to a table to have her lie down, and I asked her what that table looked like. And she said, well, it was just like, an ironing board. And so she had that 50s mentality. She did a lot of ironing. So it had that shape towards the end like an ironing board, and that was her description. So she said that she was starting to get scared, and they continuously told her not to worry, that they're only interested in her baby, and that everything was going to be okay. They were just going to do one more exam, and that everything was going to be okay. So she said that she heard this pop, like a Christmas cracker, that you used to celebrate the holidays, in her head. And they kept talking, and she became compliant. She was no longer afraid. Then, after every invasive procedure a pregnant woman could experience, they were finished with her, and she woke up bleeding both vaginally and from the nose, near the back door of the house, but not quite there. And she was crying out for help, and her husband didn't hear her. The kids didn't wake up. Then the neighbor heard, and he roused the family, and he rushed her to the hospital, and she gave birth to me. And I didn't know this my entire life until I was 51 years old. I got a call from Canada after doing a TV show called Topic UFO. And she said, listen, I'm your mom, and I had no idea that you've spent 25 years doing this. I have no idea what you do for a living. she said, but I think you should know the story of your birth. Well, my mom never raised me because I think she had some difficulties emotionally with dealing with the situation, and I must have been a constant reminder of that and how painful for her to have to be reminded of something that freaked her out so much. So she gave me up, and I was raised by my dad and a plethora of stepmothers and my grandmother. So there's an extraterrestrial interference. She did tell her doctor. She told my dad too, but they scared her into thinking that she might be a little bit crazy. And so she never said another word about that story for 50 years. And before I go on, I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. So last year, after the phone call, I called the producer of the TV show Experiencers, and I said, I just heard from my mom. Here's her phone number. Why don't you give her a call? I think we should have her on the show. Let her tell her story. I said, she's waited 50 years to be free. So he talked to her for hours and hours, and he was fascinated, and we were going to have her on the show, and the phone rang, and I was about to, tell her the good news, and it was a hospital in Canada calling, saying that she had suffered a major brain aneurysm and a stroke and was unable to speak. I thought, how ironic. What? How is that even possible? And is that on purpose? And of course, is it? So I was very concerned and rushed to an airport and jumped on a plane to Canada and stayed with my mom through her surgery, and she's doing well. And I'm hoping that in October of this year in Sacramento, we're having UFO Con, the Experiencers event. This is a conference where people who have had face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact with extraterrestrials will have an opportunity to speak. They'll tell their story in a non-judgmental forum, and people will hear their truth, and they'll be able to speak without the humiliation, without the ridicule, without people thinking, oh, you must be crazy, because they're not crazy. And in fact, they generally possess higher intelligence. We're not sure why that is, but pardon me? Windsor, Ontario. So I thought that was interesting. So Jim O'Connell, as a friend of mine and the producer of the TV show Experiencers, and earlier this month they released the first trailer for the show to air. Yay. And then a week later, Jim mysteriously died. The newspaper said UFO researcher and experiencer group leader Jim O'Connell mysteriously dead. His wife said that they went to bed that night and everything was fine. He was fine. Jim wasn't sick. And Jim didn't wake up, and she did. And the next day, Jim was cremated. Now, I know this because the reporter who did the story called me and said he's number 2 in a month. Mysteriously died, experiencer group leader. We don't know. It's a mystery. We have no idea. And we won't know because the body has been cremated. No autopsy. So now I'd like to go over a couple of my own true hypnotherapy alien abduction case studies. These are real people. These are two very similar cases. They parallel each other from the time that they started. The first abductee was just a young girl when it started. She was 7. He was 7. They both live in Sacramento, California. They had very similar UFO dreams. They were little kids. They looked out the window and they saw a UFO. They saw extraterrestrials. Female woke one night to a reptile, she believes, and a mantis in her room. She was just a little girl at the time, and they took her. Have a quick look here. She did say that she could feel the presence of other entities in the room, and I'm going to say that that's very important when we hear that, because remember, in the subconscious mind, it remembers everything. We use the body as an antenna to interpret the world around us through our senses. And so when she says she feels that there was another presence in the room, I by all means believe that there was another presence in the room. She had been abducted for over 20 years. She did try to scream. She passed out. I want to say whited out, because there's a difference. When you faint, you black out. When you white out, you lose consciousness. I believe it's for a different reason. I don't know why. I just know there's a difference. I know that there are two different things that happen. You can black out or white out. So next time she awakens, she's on the ironing board table, and she's with gray aliens, and she knows that they're experimenting on her. And over the years, by the time she hits puberty, at about 12, she believes that she had eggs removed from her. Now, she was born in 1986, so she's about 28 or 29 years old right now. She's a lifelong experiencer. She was left, before she came to me, terrified, confused, angry. She suffers from both stress and some insomnia. And like many abductees, she's developed a fear of the dark. You know, it's not uncommon for abductees to become drug or alcohol abusers, because they were dealing with an aspect of reality that people say don't exist. That creates a block in the mind, and they're unable to process that information because clearly it exists. It must be real. Now, I want to tell you that this particular abductee, female, she continuously was abducted and then brought into a breeding program. She's been on a craft. She's had a baby placed into her arms where she was expected to know how to nurture it. One baby, she said, was blue, and that the nose was like a short trunk, like an elephant might have. And she said that she was repulsed by the baby and disgusted by the baby, and at the same time felt empathy towards it and wanted it to be okay. So when we have to process conflicting emotions, the mind sometimes doesn't know what to do with it. So now, after all these years, Amy is a recovered abductee. She did suffer from post-abduction stress disorder. It's a syndrome coined by Rose Hargrove, who was a psychiatric nurse who worked with many abductees. And this is the problem now. She's a woman. She's a mother. And she wants her babies back. They're hers, or they're ours. They're human as well. And so, what might that be like? To think that your genetics, your sperm or your ovum was taken and a child was born. These children have no history. They have no cultural roots. They have nothing. But they must have some human instinct. What is that? Nothing is stronger on the planet than a mother. This is Mother Earth. We are in a series of garden planets. We're younger, but the Earth has many planets like this. These are all garden planets. There are many types of planets, but they call ours a garden planet. But that doesn't give extraterrestrials the right to come and harvest, which is exactly what they did. So this leaves her now with a whole new set of mental stressors. What do we do about that? We have to do something, These are our children. And if you defy nature and you come on our planet and you begin to take our number one natural resource, which is mothers, procreation, and you steal that from us, we have to be able to come into ourselves and prevent this. And there are ways to prevent an abduction. And we do have power. We have lots of personal power, but we need to be taught how to use it correctly. I'd like to teach you some in my workshop. So the male subject, I believe he was a year younger. I didn't get him until he was already in his 20s. I got her from the time she was 7. So I had her whole life of experiences, him not until he was 20. But then when I'm doing my research and compiling my stuff, I'm like, what? Same age, same city. Oh, I woke up to the same beings? He said the same thing. They were so hard to look at. And you know why? People report that when they are in the presence of certain grays or mantis, that they have the ability to look so deeply into our eyes that they not only see every aspect of this life, but every life we've ever had. And this leaves them feeling invaded and very invaded. So he did suffer with that. He also felt a strange energy. And I'm going to tell you, I only get that from the younger people. I think the younger people, my opinion, seem to be a little bit more sensitive to some subtle energies. Or perhaps they're more open to them because of when they were born. I'm not sure why, but I think our youth is going to have to carry on our work. And I hope that they can, because they're the ones that actually might be more capable of doing it. We can only relay the information. They're going to have to take it across the finish line. So he feels a sense of vibration in his body, like he's being pulled out of his own body. His body was shaking so badly. He felt like his consciousness, his soul was being pulled from his body. This is reported to me often. And then he loses consciousness with that. He awakens on the same table. And he is hooked up and also had various types of medical procedures performed on him. He said that he thought a mantis was observing. He said he felt it in his head, but he also continuously heard the message to not feel any fear. That's quite nice of them. So he was left with a sense of wonder. In fact, he felt special. He felt chosen, somewhat superior. I like to call this the Christ syndrome, because they all feel like all of a sudden they were picked. Their genetics are so special that some alien race is going to be saved by them. And that they develop this Christ superiority feeling. It doesn't last long. It usually ends harshly and quite abruptly. But they do get that. It's confusing. I'm working with another guy right now. He did break down, and they hospitalized him for a wee bit to do some psychological testing and found him to be fit, sent him back to me. And he is getting over that aspect of being so very special. So they really have to lose that, because let me tell you, that's a straight up manipulation. They just wanted him to feel that way. But you see, when you take something from the mind, you have to give it something back to balance it out. And so when they take the fear, they have to change it up. So over time, he too becomes curious about potential offspring because of so many abductions. That both of them have expressed a desire to meet each other. And I'd be willing to facilitate such a meeting. But I'm not sure what that might do. I'm not sure if that's the healthiest thing. But then again, they're going to meet each other at the experiencers group, whether they know it or not. So they will run into each other. So I'm curious to see if they energetically find each other. I suspect they will. You think they will too? Yeah, I think they will too, because energy has a way of finding its way back. Okay, so if we look at the two case studies side by side, pretty identical, right down to the emotional response. I think that's important. See, Amy, she got mad because she was hurt, right? And she wants her babies back. He felt like, yay, I get to populate a whole new world. But he has come out of that. That's the big difference. And I think that possibly it's because of the gender and a little ego. So all the same, straight across the board, right up until the very end. In the very end, we have to raise these questions about hybrid children in breeding programs and how they violate our human rights. And we have to figure out what we're going to do with these children. Dr. David Jacobs says that he believes very much in the breeding program. He thinks that all of it is negative. He thinks that they are self-serving. He thinks that some of them may be demons. And we see that any lower entity has the possibility of falling into that vibration. Remember when we talked earlier about the hierarchy, that within each place that we live, a consciousness exists, whether it's under the sea, in the sky, whatever bandwidth of energy we have in space. Each encompasses its own life, and with life, there becomes consciousness. So with so many things happening, we have to ask about this hybrid program. We see that Dr. Jacob tells us that women teachers were abducted, and they were working with hybrids to help them integrate into society. If they're taking these hybrids and having them integrate into society, and they're not self-serving, and then they're serving their own agenda, then we have to be able to figure out a way to understand all of it and then come to some conclusions with what to do with the hybrids. Yeah, the military grabbed the hybrids as quick as possible. And if we're talking about abductions, I don't want to forget to add my lab. My lab is a form of abduction that happens way too often. It's a military laboratory abduction, and after an abductee comes forward and states their story, they're then re-abducted by the military and put through a grueling process of trying to find out everything that they know about the ETs. Well, that's what I'm trying to do too, but with a different agenda. Completely. And we see that even with the My Labs, military lab abductees, they state that there are all kinds of different breeding happening right here. And if you look at our own technology, is that so hard, to see that we have the ability to both make clones and splice and dice our genetics? Just look at our GMOs. So this, of course, is a hybrid child. Well, we don't know, but we do know a few things about what happens to a person after they're abducted. We've been able to compile some statistics. We have abduction statistics that will tell us what percentage of people are going to have certain symptoms. We see 64% have a high craving for citrus fruit, eating 4 or 5 oranges or whatever citrus of their choice at a time. This is a statistic. So we're looking at vitamin C here, I'm imagining. 73% have an unexplained phobia of owls, clowns, spiders, and other large-eyed animals. This is deliberate. This is a screen memory. When we did the brainwave slides, we saw that where they can slip in between those two states of consciousness, and that's what they do. And then they put in a screen memory, and I've come across my share of screen memories. I haven't been able to get through everyone. It's true. I've been blocked by a couple. One guy, every time we would get right to where I could recognize the screen memory, knew all of the details of it being a screen memory, he said, all I can see is a big gray alien saying no, like not letting him break it down. So I back off immediately because perhaps the client isn't psychologically prepared at this point in their evolution to deal with such an encounter. And when it comes, we should do it more naturally. Some people seek out the information because they want it. So we also see 68% have high cravings for salt, and 54% have apparent past life memories. About 90% have an increased psychic ability. And that's right across the board. Children, both male, female, adults of all ages. And I'm not sure why we have that increased psychism. 50%, though, also state that they have had a near-death experience. 88, this is mostly women, have menstrual irregularities and missing pregnancies. Yeah, it's all women on that one. So when we're looking at the missing pregnancies and the hybrids, I mean, people who believe that they've had a hybrid child taken from them do require compassionate therapy. Some women are so convinced that they've been impregnated that they go to great lengths to rid themselves of this pregnancy. And some will go to a doctor and have the pregnancy confirmed, set a date to terminate the pregnancy, only to find out on the date of the appointment there's no baby there and no evidence of a baby there. And women know there should be a little bit of evidence left there. And there's not. And they're just not pregnant anymore. So when a physical or sexual encounter is remembered, and I have a lot of abductees, oh man, I have like 5 or 6 people having extraterrestrial sex right now, and it's an issue. This is against our natural laws. I'm telling you, this is not something you should partake in. And each encounter has always been a reptile or reptoid extraterrestrial involved. Like I said earlier, when we were going over the alien races in the headlines, those are the ones most interested in our sexuality, are the reptoids. So really, I'm thinking that we have to be a little bit more proactive and start doing something about it. I mean, you know, we can gather all of the evidence that we want. We can spend countless hours going through notes and compiling statistics and looking at our research. We can make conferences and have people come and attend them. But what are we doing about it? I mean, we're talking about human life. It should be the most precious thing. So that without missing babies, they're not really missing. And some babies are put back in the mother at about 3 months and then taken again several months later. There have been a couple of women who actually state that they've gone full term and naturally delivered a hybrid. So here's a couple of pictures of what they might look like. These are, the top left one is a clay mold, E.T. artist out of the Las Vegas area. She's got a lot of experience in this. This is an actual photo, and so is this. They believe that this elongated head, although we know that there are medical reasons for this to happen, in this case, it was not any medical. This baby here, I'm sure we've seen, this is an in utero picture of a hybrid child. This showed up on an ultrasound at a gynecologist's office. So I'm going to say alleged because I'm supposed to. So I said it. But these are the hybrid babies that didn't make it. The medical issues we see with hybrid children are in breathing. The lungs are not developing the way that humans do. And so when they try to integrate back into our society, a lot of hybrids don't live past about 13 years old. The ones that do, they really do try to give them in positions. We'll see them in low-level positions working in hotels or restaurants. They'll put them in a night shift position so that they can begin to socially explore, because they are completely adept at being social. Now, there are hybrid children that do exist, and their DNA is so different than ours that it certainly warrants further investigation by whatever science can look at it. This is a child, but I want to just say for a second, as we're talking about these babies and the reason that they're creating the hybrid children, one, for integration onto our planet, but two, because they love the garden planets. They are beautiful, aren't they? But our soul as consciousness is what they're trying to get. Although they're technically advanced, they lack that. And without consciousness and the ability to move from one conscious realm or one conscious way of thinking into another, you simply can't do it unless you know the rules. And we are human. Hue is a very ancient word for light. It's still, today we use it to measure hues in light. Man is short for manifestation. A human is a light-embodied entity. That's what we are. So a human is a soul embodied. We are light embodied, and they desire the light. That's us. This, well, meet Milagros and her mom. Now her DNA, the mom is the woman in the back. She gave birth to her daughter. She has the unusual blood DNA too. Her doctors are also investigating it further. She claims to be an alien hybrid. Her mom says yes, she is. Her mom remembers the encounter. She is one of the women that says that she actually did go forward with it. I don't have a sample of her blood. I have CAT scans from UC Davis showing implants in the pineal gland on one abductee. I have all his medical work from UC Davis, and he has an implant in the pineal gland. He had one in the groin, and one of his earlier implants that he got as a child was just behind the knee. And now he's in his 80s. He's a member of my group, and the implants are about on the thigh, roughly 4 inches apart. He believes that when they touch, he'll die, so he's given me permission to film his body post-mortem. I've already filmed his body, and I've placed my finger on the implants and pressed on it, and a small little triangle implant or imprint comes onto my thumb. We have it on film. We have his medical records, and I have permission to continue to film his body post-mortem. So we see that Maria Milagros has the same implants. Her mom says that they're in the exact same places. Well, I'll show you a little bit about, if they're not in this presentation, there are several types of implants, some that just monitor consciousness development. They're associated with the orange orbs that people see in sightings. When people see an orange orb as a UFO sighting, it is often around an area where people are discussing consciousness, when they're discussing human potential or human evolution or discussing our place, where we're breaking free of that three-dimensional thought prison and moving into larger spaces of consciousness with a greater understanding and a larger reality. They want to see what we're thinking. And I have to tell you, there are ancient texts, including bibliographies of the St. James version of the Bible, that state whenever 2 or 3 people are discussing this, they're being monitored. And we are. So we know back in that time there were many sightings. So we have a few more questions raised by these alien hybrids. If you go to this website, this is a star child that was discovered in China a few years ago. Does anybody know this child or about this child? He has blue eyes, and he sees in the dark like an animal. And all kinds of people have come from all over the place to test him, to draw blood, to do what they can. So what they've done was they place him in a room that's completely 100% blacked out. And then on a table, they'll have a variety of different letters with things written on them. And he's to go in and read them. And then either speak, they can hear him in there. He can read them out loud, or he can come out and tell them what he read. And he just sees in the dark. He's just a little boy, and he's very unusual. He's very unusual because his family claims that he is an alien hybrid, and they're calling him a star child. And I know there's a lot of people these days that are calling themselves star children and star seeds, but he has the DNA to prove it. So I want to talk about the word mother again for just a minute. I told you earlier, this is Mother Earth. And it is the most powerful word on our planet. I really want you to hear that. I don't want you to underestimate the power of a mother, because our planet is our mother at this time in our evolution. We see Mother Sea. Do you know what that term? That's an esoteric term. Jean Bletzer, she's amazing. She expresses it as totality. But it's really the essence of having two modes, two minds or substances. It's really a time-space continuance. It's the most amazing thing in the world. This is Mother Sea. There are lots of mother words. There's motherboard. It's a connector. Connects circuits into slots. We know this because everything that has to do with the word mother has to do with how we live, how we think, how we communicate, how we interact. There's nothing finer. And there's motherhood, of course, is the heart of the beholder. And if you've listened to anything, you've heard that love and heart are the strongest frequencies. And in the human body, people think it's the brain because we can think at the speed of light. But it's not. Energetically speaking, it's the heart that has the strongest energy. And the heart of a mother is something those extraterrestrials must be very wary of at this point in our evolution, because we are refusing to allow it any further. I hope many of you can attend my workshop this weekend so that you can see the techniques that I'm working on to help us with that project. Mothership is another one we use. Large spaceship containing many small ships. It's just like what it sounds like. I've seen a mothership. In the early 90s, I was doing some UFO investigation in Pacifica in Northern California, just outside of San Francisco, and I'd set up all the cameras in the daytime, marked our horizon lines. We knew every light in the sky, and came back. Saw a ship come up out of the ocean, open, and just all kinds, 8 to 10 little ships come flying out of it. That's a mothership. I have that on old film. So mother in ufology is something that we have to look at because it's the hybrid program. It's the mothers. It's our own natural resource, unique to our planet, garden planet. We have to protect it. So, thank you very much. So human mothers have nurtured alien hybrids. And right now, when I talk to my abductees, they want their babies back. This is going to be a movement you're seeing over the next little bit of time. We are going to fight for the rights of these children. This is a problem, though. A lot of these children are highly telepathic, and they sometimes exhibit superior strength. We don't want to confuse those with the super soldiers who are designed genetically to do that. The hybrid children do have these abilities. I was going to cover a couple of post-abduction syndromes that manifest in the treatment for them if you suspect somebody that you know yourself or a family member have had an encounter. These are some of the warning signs that you could look for. David tells me I only have 10 minutes, probably 8.5-ish. But that's PAS. A reluctance to enter into a relationship. That's done on purpose, just so you know. They do that so they can continuously manipulate and control us. They make relationships very difficult, and relationships are an art. Very easy to get around once you know the rules. Again, everything has a protocol. They become phobic, and they avoid dental offices, doctor offices, elevators, and escalators. We can guess why. Because all of these procedures remind them of the trauma they experienced during abduction. People often will engage in avoidance of medical care to the detriment of their own health. Again, this is an extraterrestrial interference. They're interfering with our children, they're interfering with our health, and they're interfering in our relationships. Just so you know, I have a book coming out at the end of the year called The Extraterrestrial Interference. And it also expresses how they interfere in people's lives, how they sidetrack them. So there's recommended treatment for this. It's a support group. It's people who will help you. But what has been most effective is hypnotherapy. But I will preface that with an experienced hypnotherapist, one that will allow the experience to unfold naturally without their own thoughts or guidance, because this is imperative to get the research correct and, of course, the ultimate health of the person.
Would you like to answer questions?
Sure. Does anybody have a question?
Yeah.
David, yeah.
Do you believe that these children, probably over 50,000 of them, have been taken from childhood to other planet, and now they're 30 years old, 25 years old, they want to bring them back and create a new race and something?
On this planet, and in this country alone, there is an unbelievable amount of children that go missing. And don't think for 1 second that gets by a UFO researcher. We know human children are being taken, and we don't know where these kids are. Back in the day, they used to put their faces on milk cartons, and it got so overwhelming because there were so many of them that they had to stop. The numbers are way higher than 50,000. And it's all over the world. We're looking at millions of children go missing all of the time. And yeah, we have our eye on that, and we do think that they're being taken off planet. Now, we know that we have Laura Eisenhower talking later, and she talks about the military-industrial complex and the space program and people going to Mars and relocating. Is this possible? Yes, by all means. And could they be doing that with our children? Yes, they could. And they most likely are. But if they bring them back, it'll be for their own agenda. And it would be very much like if we went to a foreign country and snagged up a bunch of kids and then turned them against their government and then sent them back where they would be easily accepted. Once again, it's a manipulation. All of the extraterrestrials that I'm talking about here today are self-serving. They have an agenda. They are not altruistic. They're not here to save us. We'll learn how to save ourselves because we have that power. So with that, if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to take them. If not, I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
We are going with Alfred Weber in Canada. Come back
in Skype, 10 minutes.
10:15, come back.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.